On 9/11, buildings across from or adjacent to the World Trade Center were destroyed or severely damaged, but for St. Paul's Chapel, which became transformed overnight into a relief center for the recovery workers at Ground Zero. I was a volunteer at the chapel during the 8 months of cleanup, and out of that experience I wrote this poem, used as the memento card for the millions of pilgrims and visitors to St. Paul's after the chapel reopened to the general public in 2002. It also serves as the signature poem for my most recent book of poetry, St. Paul's Chapel and Selected Shorter Poems. St. Paul's Chapel. It stood. Not a window broken, not a stone dislodged. It stood when nothing else did. It stood when terrorists brought September down. It stood among myths. It stood among ruins. To stand was its purpose. Long lines prove that. It stands, and around it now a shrine of letters, poems, acrostics, litter of the heart. It is the standing people want, to grieve, serve, and tend, celebrate the lasting stone of St. Paul's Chapel. And deep into its thick breath, the largest banner fittingly from Oklahoma climbs heavenward with hands as stars, hands as stripes, hands as a flag. And a rescuer reaches for a stuffed toy to collect a touch. And George Washington's pew doesn't go unused. Charity fills a hole or two. It stood in place of other sorts. It stood when nothing else could. The great had fallen as the brute hardware came down. It stood. The next poem is Back in the Garden. The verse, like a number of my poems, employs a technique I developed a long time ago called elastic rhyme. It provides flexibility where rhyme can occur. Back in the Garden. The serpent has requested of the apple tree, except for unjustified violence and such jazz, that aside, what will be the most glaring sin of all? Its branches astir, the apple tree replied, doubtless as nothing comes close that I foresee, idolatry, idolatry, idolatry. It'll be everywhere, a crude potpourri, work for some, shrine of power for others, food, drugs, incandescent sex, proud wine, sports and money, enough white marble. An endless number of things and stuff without which the mystique of it, the children of God will think they cannot live for a week. The serpent, replete with smiles, went his own way, for the game was set and the fix complete. I was one of two poets, the other, W.H. Auden, on the drafting committee for the retranslation of the Psalms for the Book of Common Prayer of the Episcopal Church. Understandably, I'm often asked to talk about the project and related poetry matters. I recently discussed prophecy in the Psalms and in secular verse at a suburban church outside of Philadelphia, and I chose the following poem of mine to illustrate prophecy in secular poetry. Do you think it appropriate for the setting? One or two thought not. Another sultry moment. Flesh is the thing. Sere, rough-hewn leather says we've gotten old and baroque. Fruit-flavored and spot-free, suppleness tells a much different story. We knew the latter once, when sap rose daily, nightly, continually, not deciduously, no seasonal to seasonal preservation, no waiting upon a lambent pulse. Flesh was the thing. Now sap clogs on its way, slow to surface on the parched high of thinner skin, and yet we've learned the tricks of trading guile for unction and grit for sauce. Wizened in a grasp of sentient claims, flesh is still the thing. How about a couple of short quatrains? Who is satisfied? The one ratified or the one fortified? No, the one implied. The next quatrain was published in the New York Times at the height of the Clinton impeachment. It appeared alongside an associated cartoon that depicts someone in the background recording a conversation between Monica Lewinsky and Linda Tripp having lunch in the foreground. I used to say a lot before smarts I got. Now I say a lot less and get into less mess. And to end, 3 haikus, 17-syllable poems, normally divided into 3 lines. He found a language he could employ to explore the voice within him. Much verse is being written, not from the heart, but from the pancreas. To be satisfied in our little cells of twilight is heroic.